for you.
Yeah.
As Alison says, we're going to look today at how a CMI qualification can add value and enhance your professional skills. And I hope through what I'll tell you over the next few moments, our discussion and any questions from you in the audience today, you'll get a really good flavour for exactly that. So I'm just going to start off with a bit of an introduction to CMI. And this year is actually our 75th anniversary year. So CMI was formed in the years after the Second World War, and was really part of the government of the time's attempts to rebuild the economy in the aftermath of the war. So we've been going for that 75-year period. We became the Chartered Management Institute 20 years ago. So we were, up until then, the Institute of Management. And we're the only chartered professional body representing managers and leaders in the UK. That means that we're the only organisation that can award the chartered manager status, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. What we're really trying to do at CMI is to help people that come into management careers to become really conscious leaders, and we quite often use this term, the accidental manager, at CMI. So many of us embark on a career in management and leadership without having the professional preparation for the challenges that will throw at us. In essence, we are accidental managers. We may well have been the best most technically proficient in the team at the end of one week, and the following week we're asked to lead that team. Only 20% of people actually go into management in this country with professional training and preparation to help them with those first steps. So turning accidental managers into conscious leaders is a real theme for us. And what we're ultimately trying to do is to help create better led and better managed organizations. I'll talk in a moment about the benefit of that. And ultimately, we're on a mission to increase the number and the standard of professionally qualified managers. Now, as the professional body for managers and leaders, you can imagine that we're involved in both the setting of professional standards and then the monitoring and an update of those standards as we go. So the diagram on this slide here really helps to identify the way in which our professional standards are organised. You can see right at the heart of all that we do is a commitment to values, ethics, and culture. But then we have three areas around personal effectiveness, interpersonal excellence, and organisational performance that make up our professional standards. And within each of those three segments, there are further drill downs into more specific management and leadership skills and challenges. Now, all of our qualifications, our products and our services are built on the bedrock of these professional standards. And so in essence, what we're trying to help people to do is to translate those professional standards into really excellent management and leadership practice on a day-to-day basis. We also like to feel that we provide a professional home for people throughout their career in management and leadership. And I hope you can see through this slide here that what we're aiming to do is to make sure that we are relevant to people at every stage of their management and leadership career, whether they're aspiring to go into a management position for the first time, or a senior executive, or anywhere in between those two. We're also, if you like, agnostic when it comes to sector. So we work across all sectors of the economy, and our portfolio of services ranges from the formal qualifications that are really immersive and enable people to study over a prolonged period of time, to more bite-sized learning, digital content that allows people to dip into, brush up on a certain area, or to enhance their skills in another. And what we're looking to do throughout this is to provide a very clear and relevant means for people to jump onto this journey at any point. So, of course, not everybody joins us as an aspiring manager. Many people are midway through their management career before they get engaged with CMI. But we're always looking to offer some means for people to progress, to enhance their skills, and indeed to connect with people from across our community, to share challenges, to help solve them through peer learning, and to make new connections that may bring about great possibilities and opportunities for their future. Ultimately, we're trying to enable as many people as possible to put themselves in the position where they become ready for assessment against our chartered status, the chartered manager. And so we offer a number of pathways through our services, through our qualifications, to enable people to do that. And as you'll hear a little bit more about later on, we have a specific pathway for members of IMechE that's designed to enable you to become a chartered manager when the appropriate time arrives for you in your career. So I wanted just to talk a little bit about the importance of management skills and, if you like, the reason why CMI exists. The evidence is out there and freely available across multiple sources from a wide range of highly respected research outfits, consultancies, government departments. But what tends to sort of emerge from all this variety of research and publications is that actually in the UK in particular, we have a productivity gap. We lag behind many of the other most developed economies in the world by quite staggering ranges. You can see in that first bullet point on this slide some percentages that really sort of bring this home. And when that's translated into a monetary sense, the lost productivity in the UK in any given year is quite eye-watering. Now, many organisations that research this, that have looked into this in detail, including, as you can see here, the Bank of England, McKinsey are also mentioned on this slide, and a number of other entities. Oftentimes, this comes back to citing a lack of management quality and a lack of professionalism and leadership as being the #1 most addressable issue about our productivity gap in the UK. And so the opportunity is huge to move our productivity forward, to make us more competitive globally as an economy by addressing the quality of management and leadership across the country. And you can see here there's a number of stats around this. This isn't just about the productivity, but actually where you get better management and leadership, you get better engagement. And as you'll all be aware, the more engaged a staff team are with the work and the purpose of their organisation, the more likely they are to help push that organisation further forward. And so beyond productivity, we get benefits around well-being, around retention of staff and talent, attraction of talent. And so there are numerous ways in which addressing the quality of management and leadership in our organisations is beneficial to our economy and to our society. I mentioned a moment ago that I'd talk a little bit about the impact of chartered managers. So we did some research 2 years ago with an organisation called Oxford Economics into some of the impacts that people becoming chartered have on their business, on their organisation, and the impacts for themselves as individuals. And with this slide, you can see the headlines there around the economic impacts. Particularly draw your attention to the piece in the middle there, where every year having a chartered manager within your business is going to boost revenues by an average of £62,000. So there's quite a roll up in value there over a 5-year period. We also find that on average, chartered managers are better paid than their non-chartered compatriots, and also that there is a contribution made by every single chartered manager to the overall economy each year. So those are some of the hard numbers in terms of the economic impact of chartered manager. When we look at individuals and we talk to people who have gone through the process to become chartered, we get some really impressive results and outcomes. Self-awareness amongst managers and leaders is absolutely huge. Without that, it's very difficult for managers or leaders to become effective or to really deliver the best of themselves for their organisations and their team. Over 9 out of 10 chartered managers say that their self-awareness increased through the process of becoming chartered. And that's because of the way in which that process really relies heavily on reflection, on the management and leadership practice of the individual over recent times. And it also challenges people to think about what's next and what they can do better. Self-confidence is also important in managers and leaders, and you can see here that we get again a similar boost in self-confidence from the chartered manager process. One of the things that 20 years ago, when this organisation became chartered, we might not have expected people to say is that their management skills actually improve because of going through the assessment process to become chartered. And again, they cite the reflective nature of the process, giving them that rare chance to step back and actually breathe and think about, okay, what have I been doing, but how can I improve? And so 8 out of 10 citing improvements in their practice because of getting chartered. And many people, over 3/4 of chartered managers, saying that they get a real competitive advantage. That could be when it comes to applying for new jobs, getting promoted, or it could be in terms of reassuring clients about the quality of leadership in their organization when they're pitching for work or tenders, for example. There are other impacts as well. So there's an absolute sort of ethical dimension to chartered status. As I mentioned, with our professional standards, ethics sits right at the heart of what we do, and making sure that people are role modeling what it is that it means to be chartered and demonstrating not only their management skills to achieve better results, but the way in which they go about those achievements and making sure that they are ethically right on cue is an important part of this. Change management is always the most popular topic when we look at how members of CMI are digesting content, engaging with events and so forth. And again, 8 out of 10 chartered managers say that actually they've used their improvements in managerial skills to drive and deliver change. And there is a wider sort of halo effect, if you will, where not only is there a benefit to the individual and the organization from becoming chartered, but actually there's a benefit for the teams that they work with, whether they're leading those teams, collaborating with those teams beyond their own practice. You can find loads of case studies from chartered managers on our website, but I thought I'd just bring to your attention, I mentioned earlier on that we have pathways for engineers from right across the engineering universe, I guess, to become chartered. William Duncan is a great example of that. He's a chartered engineer, works for National Grid. You can find a video interview with William on our website. A real advocate for chartered manager status, and you'll find many other case studies on our website as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on, but there are a number of opportunities coming up for you in the near future to explore what we've got to offer through CMI qualifications and the progress towards chartered manager. So we'll pop this slide on the screen a little bit later on again, and I know that Alison will talk around this, but we're both very keen for you to be aware that in the coming months there's opportunities for you to get into a CMI program and to start to see some of the benefits that I've outlined for yourselves. So Alison, I'm going to take the slides off for a moment if I can, and then we'll have a chat.
Lovely, thanks a lot, Matt. So whilst you're doing that, there was a few really key things that stood out to me, but I think it's just worth mentioning that we've got a long and very, very successful history with you guys, and 100% stand behind what you do and the impact that you're looking to make. And in fact, that slide on impact was absolutely brilliant, and there was a few things that really struck home there to me. So you had down 91% increase in self-awareness as people approach, as people make the transition to become chartered. What a staggering figure that is, and we'll dip into that a little bit later. But one of the things that I love about CMI, especially when we talk to engineers, is that there are really clear pathways for development. You put huge focus around community. You put ethics at the heart of your business, as do we, and as I know do all the engineers that we speak to. It's a really key component. And what I also loved about some of the things that you've been talking about and sharing with us today is that as you improve and develop as a manager and leader, that creates more engagement within the team, within the business. And obviously there are ripple effects outside of your working life as well, which are also powerful. And then you went on to say that, that has an impact on, recruitment, retention, both are really key areas for our economy at the moment. So really fascinating, and thank you for sharing that. And I've got a few questions that that I just wanted to, get a sense what your thoughts were on these. So for example, as far as engineers are concerned, what would you class as critical skills? So from the start of their career, right the way through as they go on to senior manager and director.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important question, and it's something that at CMI we spend quite a lot of time doing research into. So we work a lot with employers to understand, okay, well, what are the skills that employers across sectors are really looking for example, from graduates entering the job market, but also when they're looking to sort of bring new talent into their business in various roles. What are the key skills that they're really looking for? And what we find time and again is that a lot of organizations are saying that, yeah, great to have your sort of technical skills in place and so forth, but beyond those technical skills, there are a number of other areas that can really help to differentiate. And they tend to be around some of the skills that really help to create effective managers and leaders. So that could be around the communication skills. Of course, we always talk about communication skills, but in terms of what that really means, sort of tuning into aspects around sort of empathy. And we've heard a lot about the importance of empathy over the course of the pandemic, of course. The ability to relate to people at various levels of hierarchy in an organization, the sort of interpersonal skills, if you like. Making sure that, as part of the sort of set of strengths that you bring to an organization, self-awareness is key. That understanding of who you are, how you come across to others, how you make people feel. One of the things that was mentioned actually last week, we had a big conference where the NatWest CEO, Alison Rose, spoke, and she said that leaders need to be more mindful that they cast a shadow, and that shadow can be for good or bad. And they've got to make sure that the impression that they make, that casting of that shadow, is a very positive thing for the people around them in their networks. So I think the skills that employers are telling us that they're looking for go above and beyond technical skills. They're into that communication, those management and leadership skills, whether it's management of yourself as an individual and how effectively do you prioritize, how effectively do you work with others, how effectively do you collaborate. That sort of partnership working sense is also something that we see coming through more and more, being able to work effectively as a team as well as leading a team. So I think, whether we're talking to engineers or people from any other sector where there are high levels of technical skills and proficiency, I think the sort of skills that you can gain through management and leadership education are highly in demand from employers. And when we look at the evidence base there, we've done research over the last 2 or 3 years using publicly available information on the destination of university graduates into their career, and we find that those that have come out of a degree course that's been dual accredited with a CMI qualification, they're actually 10% more employable than those without that. So again, there's a real benefit there in terms of the skills that we're helping people to hone through that management and leadership training.
Thanks, Matt. I just found that analogy when, with that quote from Alison about casting a shadow, that's really powerful. And also, I don't know whether you'd agree with this, but, for me, this is a lifetime journey. It doesn't, start and then end as you get your chartership. For example, things like time management and prioritization, I tend to find that I'll do very well with it, and then a couple of big projects land, and all the strategies and tactics that have worked so well for me a week ago go out the window. So this really is a sort of constant recalibration, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's really fair to say. Personally, I find that too, that there are times in my working life where I've felt that, yeah, okay, I've really cracked it on delegation or time management or projects or something like that. And then that you've always got to be mindful that something will come out of left field, and that old saying about pride comes before a fall, all that sort of stuff applies, and suddenly you find yourself swamped, and it's okay. But having something to fall back on, I think this is where that difference between the accidental manager and the conscious leader comes in. And I can speak personally. Sort of, I was an accidental manager before I joined CMI. Through my time, and as you said earlier on, I've been with CMI for a long time now. I've been lucky to go through a number of our qualification programs and then become a chartered manager. And what I have found is that as I've moved through those sort of patterns and trends that you've outlined happen, I've become better equipped each time to recognise what's going on and then to react accordingly. But you're right, it's an ongoing challenge, and there will always be something new that comes up. I mean, you know, it's such an obvious example, but it's too good not to use in this circumstance. The way in which we've all had to change over the last 2 years has been, you know, ridiculous in so many ways. If any of us had forecast that was coming just a few months before, we'd have thought each other were crazy. But that has been a huge challenge for managers and leaders. You know, the way in which something which is incredibly important in leadership, which is trust, has had to be sort of dialed up. You know, suddenly a lot of people, perhaps leaders that had a slightly old school perspective of, unless I can see my team, I'm not sure what they're doing. Suddenly they're dispersed across the globe, not necessarily working in the same space anymore or for a period of time, having to trust their teams. And on the whole, what we've seen is that trust is something that people who were not necessarily trusting their teams really should have been before. Generally, there's been feedback around productivity improvements because of more flexible working, less location dependence. But I think what's also moved on now is that when people are looking at their next career move, they're expecting that trust, that flexibility, and rightly so. You know, I think that's part of the sort of evolution of management and leadership that probably should have been happening more universally pre-pandemic, and has probably been accelerated because of it. Yet we also hear of examples that are happening at very high levels in public office about notes being left on desks about, why aren't you in the office more? Yeah, it's interesting times.
Again, some great insights there, Matt, you know, particularly around trust, which is something that we incorporate into a lot of our courses, because that really is the foundation. That's fundamental, isn't it? You know, in terms of a leader's toolkit. And also love the comment that you made earlier about how, you know, it's not about regurgitating, you know, perfect managers, you know, once they've been through the course. It's about equipping them with the tools, the context to use them in, so that, you know, when you do have you know, an increased workload, for example, you've got all of those various resources that you can draw on and deploy as necessary. So yeah, some really, really great insights there. So if I was stepping into my first leadership role, so I know that for a lot of organizations have, you know, just recently finished their appraisals, starting to implement, you know, personal and professional development plans and looking to spin those out throughout, you know, the remainder of the year. So if I was just stepping into my first management role, what sort of routes would you recommend that I take through CMI?
Sure, I mean, it's a really good question. And yeah, just thinking back to the slide that I put up with the sort of journey with people jumping on at various stages of their career and so forth. For people that are first coming into leadership, I mean, it can often be very daunting and quite a lonely place, actually, because as we've said, in the UK, 80% of people don't get the benefit of professional training or qualifications before they face that challenge. So I think there's a number of things from the CMI perspective that can help with this. And beyond the sort of formal qualifications, I'll just touch on a couple of them. We're actually just about to launch in early June a new tool that is designed to help leaders, whether they're junior managers, middle managers, or senior leaders, to do a self-assessment against the professional standards that I mentioned earlier on. And the idea of that is that it will help to draw out, and it will present it in a nice visual format and gamify things for people as well. But where do the strengths of that person lie at the moment against those professional standards? So we're hoping that will give people a bit of a boost to confidence in those areas of strength. But more importantly, to be honest, where are their developmental areas? And what we want to help people to do is to really then hone in on those developmental areas. So, if, for example, something around time management and prioritization were to be a developmental point for me, I wouldn't only see that visual representation that, look, against the other areas, that really is something that I need to brush up on, but I'd then also be signposted to things that CMI can do to help me to address that particular point. So that could be anything from a webinar on the subject that has been well rated by other members and that could help to give some sort of nuggets of advice and things that could be quickly implemented, through to articles, research papers, etc. Could be sources of content from around our community more generally, from some of our partners, or it could be through to a sort of bite-size online learning program or a full-blown qualification. What we want to do is give people a choice, both in terms of the types of materials that we make available to them, to respect different ways in which everybody learns and so forth, but also to respect the fact that at different parts of our lives, different stages of our careers, we'll have access to varying amounts of time that we can put aside to work on this. So that's going to be launched in early June, and we'll have, as I say, something for junior managers, those just entering management for the first time, such as the example that you've given, Alison, plus those that are a little bit further on at sort of middle manager or senior level sort of positions. So that's coming, and that will sort of tie together a lot of our offer. I think the other thing that we offer, as many professional bodies do, is a mentoring service. And so we have a really active community of mentors and mentees, and that sort of feeling of being daunted by the challenge facing you as a new manager, or maybe feeling a little bit alone with that challenge, there's so much benefit to be gained from mentors in that situation. So that, I think, again, would be another key aspect of what we offer.
Yeah, again, Matt, that's such a great point. And we find this a lot. So we've got a new engineering manager course coming up, which is actually CMI linked. And one of the most important things that people get from the day is that peer knowledge sharing, the networking that comes from it, and actually just really recognizing that in terms of self-awareness, this is something that's been an issue for me, and I'm not alone. My peers are facing the same issues as well. So it's not just through, discussion, and, great that you've mentioned mentoring. I'm a huge advocate for that. Having been both mentored and acting as a mentor, it's can't speak highly enough of that. And I think it'd be great if we could get some more information from you on that as it comes through to send to our members. So the other thing that I liked is the lack of time wasting that seems to be prevalent in this new service that you're offering, where I can literally, with my manager, identify the key areas of development on my personal and professional development plan, and then zone in on those specifically and learn and absorb the information in a number of different ways. I think that's really great. Mm-hmm. And so again, as information comes through, it'd be great to be able to pass that on. Yeah. So what would essentially a strategic plan look like? So let's say I'm a new manager. Maybe I've done the new engineering manager and I've done CMI level 3, and I'm now looking to move across to CMI level 5. Maybe I'm a new manager, as in I've got sort of maybe 18 months to 2 years experience in the role. Where should I be looking next?
Yeah, sure. Great question. And so, thinking about the new engineering manager program, for example, which results in a CMI level 3 qualification, as somebody on that qualification program or having completed it, you'll have access to CMI membership for a period of time, free of charge as a result of that. And that that will give access to some of the services that I'm talking about here. What it will also give, having completed a level 3 qualification with CMI, it gives you the option to become what we call a foundation chartered manager. Now that helps to effectively put you on a bit of a journey whereby you'd receive communications from CMI to help you to understand, okay, well, these are the key things that you could be thinking about next that will help you to move forward to a stage where you're ready to become that fully chartered manager. So yeah, for the sort of early career manager, or early in their journey as a manager, that sort of foundation chartered status is a core part of what we offer. And because that membership is free for a period of time, as a result of the qualification, there's the opportunity to engage with the tools that I've talked about to help hone in on those developmental areas in more depth. And as you say, a really good idea would be to do that and share it with your manager and start to think about other opportunities, not just with CMI, but within the organization, perhaps, to develop and gain greater experience in certain areas. The other thing that does, by the way, is it's a tool that is designed to be repeated every so often, so that you can benchmark against your previous sort of position and see the way in which you're developing those skills. As you move through your career, I mean, we typically envisage that sort of middle managers, heads of department, for example, would be sort of interested in our level 5 qualification suite, so that we're very much pitching level 5 to those who are, a little bit further on in their management career, a bit more experience, certainly more responsibility in a number of areas, starting to think about management challenges in a slightly different context to what we would cover at level 3, but very much building on that foundation of level 3. And the point at which somebody becomes successful in achieving a level 5 qualification at the certificate or diploma levels, that's then starting to open up the opportunity to become a chartered manager and to move forward to that chartered assessment. There's a blend of the qualification and experience required there. One of the things that's worth mentioning, and I know that one of the audience has already posed a question on this, is that yes, there are some exemptions for chartered engineers along the way, along that path towards becoming eligible to go forward for that chartered manager assessment. So yeah, we do recognise the learning and the hard work that's been done to get that chartered engineer status. There's definitely some crossovers with what we're looking for as part of that journey towards chartered manager. And beyond level 5, for us, level 7 is about strategic leadership. So we're probably talking about sort of directors and people leading business units or even businesses themselves. And so yeah, the focus there is at that strategic level. And when we look at the numbers of people coming through our programs at those various levels, you do get a bit of a pyramid shape, as you'd probably expect. There are more junior managers in our economy than there are CEOs. But what that means with those level 7 programs is that they quite often become quite different in terms of the method of delivery. There's more sort of peer focus in terms of the way in which the learning is delivered, and we get some fantastic feedback from senior people or those that are about to become senior people in terms of the experience that they've had on those programs. So yeah, in terms of the qualifications that we offer, there's you can see, if we go back to that slide that I put up earlier on with the sort of the journey, there are those formal sort of qualification options available at various stages, and that maps back, as I've said a number of times, to our professional standards and the content and the services that we provide that augment the learning experience.
Brilliant. Yeah, and we're launching CMI level 7 for the first time for directors and really senior managers. And the way that you've benchmarked that level 7 against some really fascinating and relevant topic areas to today's economy, it's great. And so Yeah, as I say, we're really looking forward to launching that to our members. And as you were talking, there's one thing that perhaps I still have a question around. Having worked with you guys for the last couple of years, just over, what is the difference between a certificate and a diploma?
So, I mean, it really comes down to the time invested in the breadth of the learning that an individual's undertaken. So, typically, a certificate is something that would be delivered on the basis of probably 2 or 3 modules being sort of delivered, and successfully passing the assessments against those modules. The diploma, you're talking sort of more like 6 or 7 modules being delivered and successfully passed. So it's really about the breadth of learning. The sort of quality of learning is signified by the level of so a level 5 certificate versus level 5 diploma, the sort of level at which you're learning, the quality of what you're expected to be able to prove that you've understood as part of the assessment is the same. The difference is just the breadth of the program.
That's great, Matt. Thank you. And also, just a reminder to our audience, we map all of these CMI courses against the UK spec, so that you can ensure that you're kept up to date with your own personal and professional development and your own career path, if you like. So we've sort of covered, a few new things that you've got in the pipeline. Anything else that you haven't talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of alluded to it earlier on, but it's our 75th birthday this year, Alison. But so I mean, well, that's a great mutual celebration, isn't it? So like you guys, we're not just going to celebrate that. I mean, we are going to celebrate it, don't get me wrong, but we also want to use it as an opportunity to really sort of hone in on what is the next set of challenges that leaders really need to rise to. And so we've been doing quite an extensive program of work actually over the last sort of 9 months or so, which we will formally launch in June, around our 75th anniversary. And what we've really honed in on is the role of leaders and managers in creating a more inclusive society. And so we've looked at a number of aspects of diversity, and yes, we've covered gender diversity, which CMI's got a long history of being very engaged in. We've also looked at ethnic diversity and some of the equity questions around opportunities when ethnicity is sort of looked at. But we've also looked at age, we've looked at socioeconomic background, we've looked at sexuality, we've looked at disability. And across all of these groups, the statistics in terms of how non-representative management and leadership are still quite staggering, actually. So if for example, we were to look at the community of managers and leaders in the UK versus society as a whole, we know that we're underrepresented, in terms of female managers and leaders by around about 600,000. Wow. When we look at people from ethnic minority backgrounds, we're around about 200,000 underrepresented. When we look at people with disabilities, another 150,000. People from less privileged socioeconomic backgrounds, there's massive underrepresentation, around about 400,000. So when we start to look at this, actually, we don't have a management and leadership community within the UK that is truly representative of our society. And why is that? Yeah. And there are all sorts of reasons, and our outputs from this research will go into that in detail. But the point is that managers and leaders are in a position to do something about this. So what we're determined to do is to help our existing community, our stakeholders in wider society to understand that, and to start to provide some really useful practical guidance on how actually we can take that understanding into positive action to drive things forward. So yeah, you'll start to see a lot more on that from us. We've been releasing various discussion papers and a couple of short films recently that you can find on our website that focus on socioeconomic background and ethnicity. But there's more of that to come as this year goes on, and this won't be one of those sort of research campaigns that delivers a report and then we move on. It'll be something that will form part of campaigns that we'll be involved with for a number of years to come.
It's so good to hear you say that, Matt. It's been top of mind for us as an institution. We launched our D&I strategy last year, and like you, it's not just a strategy. We daily are looking for ways to build pathways both inside and outside the organization to make it come alive, and actually just to live and breathe it on a day-to-day basis and challenge some of those really quite shocking figures that you've just quoted there.
Yep.
So again, it's great to hear, and it's something I'm hearing from a lot of large organizations as well, are echoing this real need for a more inclusive approach to management and leadership. Just really curious, do you have a favorite course? Is there something that you really love within the CMI portfolio, and why is that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I mentioned earlier on that I've been lucky as part of my time at CMI to do a level 5 qualification and also to become a chartered manager. I have to say that in the level 5 qualification, I think I did 6 or 7 modules during that, and it was fascinating actually because I was on a program that was run by one of our partners, and so the opportunity just to spend time with people from lots of different organizations and different sectors of the economy, I guess, was really value adding for me. It was really interesting to hear about different people's perspectives and their reality as managers actually. So I remember we had a person who was a manager in the prison service on that course, and yeah, there were certain aspects of what we were covering around when to be very directive in terms of leadership style and when to be far more sort of consensual and sort of sort of more in listening mode, taking more of a coaching approach perhaps. And some of the examples that he could bring to the fore were he's a very funny guy, so they were presented in a very humorous way, but actually there was a real serious edge to them in terms of, well, I think in this situation I have to be very directive. So thoroughly enjoyed the experiences that I had, working towards that qualification. I actually think in terms of the sort of reflections I have on it, I'll answer your question about the favourite in a moment if I may, but what I found during the qualification, because this was actually 2 or 3 years into me having become a manager, so I definitely had been that accidental manager, and I had felt some of that uncertainty, and that can get can manifest itself in terms of eroding your confidence at times. What I found during my qualification was that there was loads of new stuff that I learned and that took on board, and I was able to sort of try out a lot of it almost immediately because it was so practically rooted. But also there was an element where there was some confirmatory stuff as well, which was reassuring. It was sort of thinking, well, actually, I haven't been doing all of this, terribly wrong for the last few years, and that was actually a big part of the experience for me. And I think that self-confidence and self-awareness stuff that we talked about earlier on, that's the way in which it manifested itself for me. There was both the new stuff being taken on board, but also the reassurance that I was doing at least some things right. For me, the favourite thing that I did was actually on resource management, and this was pre-pandemic, and so it was probably delivered in a way with sort of risks and things in mind that were quite traditional at the time, because this is probably going back 7 or 8 years now. But I did find it really fascinating. Just lots of different moving parts involved in what we were learning, and I just really enjoyed that. Not the complexity as such, but just the fact that there were knock-on impacts and consequential sort of outcomes from various actions. So yeah, I think that for me was my favourite.
Thank you. It's great, isn't it, to stretch your brain in different directions like that. You know, it really does feel like a piece of elastic. And then when you obviously go back into the workplace, and this is even before you started putting anything into practice, it's like seeing the same picture but through a new lens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very, very powerful experience, you know, in and of itself. Um, we're going to be taking questions shortly, but there's a couple of things that I want to just very quickly pick up on with you. Something you just mentioned is really quite fascinating, and I'm having conversations both internally and externally about this currently. It's this coaching approach to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering what your thoughts are on that, because I have noticed for the last at least 5 to 6 years, some of the best facilitators that I come across are taking a coaching approach to facilitation. So, in other words, supporting delegates to find the answers within themselves rather than being talked at. And obviously, that's something that we do at the IMechE, but also the way that managers are talking to their teams. You know, encourage. There's it's obviously revolves around self-reflection, self-awareness, confidence. All those things are so interlinked that we've been talking about today. But I'm a firm believer that deploying that coaching approach strengthens all of those different strands. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on it in terms of how it's evolved and how you have noticed it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you about your commitment to the positive impacts of a coaching approach. I mean, I think in terms of the evolution, there's if we look back many years now, actually, we have moved away from what at one time was very much a command and control approach to management, and to a certain extent, some of the ways in which management is presented in the media and in public life, I think lags behind the reality of a lot of the practice. I think a lot of the time there's still the impression that a manager should be the person that tells you what to do, that knows the answer, that has somehow got this sort of overall control over everything within their remit. And of course, the reality is quite different to that. And again, one of the if anybody needed a reminder of that, the pandemic has shown that nobody's got all of the answers, etc. I think for me, the important thing is that nobody wants to work, or very few people want to work in an environment where they're not able to sort of bring their own ideas or make their own observations around how things could be improved. And command and control isn't always very conducive to that happening. And when you sort of look at the way in which management and leadership styles have been written about over the last 40 years, there are very few advocates for that approach. We do a lot of work with the armed forces at CMI, and I've never served in the military, and perhaps 10 plus years ago I was guilty of having this misconception, as it turned out, that command and control would be very much the approach to leadership in the armed forces. Couldn't be further from the truth, actually. They are one of the biggest investors in coaching skills in the UK. And ultimately, this is about a very simple equation that if a leader positions themselves as the font of all knowledge, insists that only they can make decisions, that everybody must do as they say, then you will get very, very unproductive organizations. You'll get log jams around sign-offs, you'll get mistrust, you'll get a lack of collaboration, and ultimately people won't want to work in those sort of organizations. And the leader themselves will be inundated with people asking if they can do the most mundane things. The coaching approach is about enabling people to find their own answers, as you say, and to helping people to feel empowerment, which will deliver confidence. It will get better engagement. You'll get faster progress, quicker decision making. And ultimately, as the leader, the advice that you can be giving to your team is at a higher level of value to everybody involved. it's not about, should I tie my left shoelace before my right shoelace? It's about something really meaningful that's going to take the department, the organization, the team, whatever it is, forward in a value-adding way. So I think the other thing is that, if you're not coaching people, you're not helping them to develop. You're basically accepting that you've hired somebody that you want to stagnate. And I think that is also, I can't believe I could ever run into somebody on the street who's a leader or a manager who would say, yeah, that's what I want. So I think it makes a lot of sense for facilitators of various things, as you say, because how do they ensure a lasting legacy from what they've delivered on any given day? Well, if people have been involved in answering the questions themselves, they're more likely to stay somewhere near that mindset on whatever it is that they've had some development through.
Absolutely. I think that's such a powerful way to end today, unless there's anything you want to add before we take questions, Matt.
Just one other thing that just cropped up in my mind as we were talking very briefly. I mentioned the work that we're doing on equality, diversity, inclusivity through our 75th anniversary year. What I didn't go on to was that beyond the sort of conclusions there, what we're also doing is embedding the principles and some of the outcomes and the findings that we're making that right across our professional standards. So, at the moment, we're guilty at CMI actually of having a module on ED&I. Well, actually, the principles of that should be imbibed throughout everything that we do. So one of the ways in which we're moving forward is to make that a reality.
Yeah, fantastic. So good to hear, Matt. I'm just going to see if there are any questions. So we've got Rob with us today, supporting on that. Let's just have a quick look here and see. What have we got? Okay, so we've got a few here. We've got quite a few, actually. So what is the best and quickest approach to get certified or chartered?
Okay, so there are a number of routes to becoming chartered, as I mentioned, and they are designed to take account of the learning that you've done and also the level of experience that you have. The quickest route is where if somebody completes a CMI level 5 diploma or level 6 or 7 diploma, then there is an exemption route which abbreviates some of the preparation for the assessment. So that is the quickest route, and it's based on the fact that somebody has done that breadth of learning that I mentioned earlier on, right across the sort of the professional standards. But it's not necessarily the best route. I mean, there are routes available that are designed to cater for, as I say, different backgrounds and experience. So for chartered engineers, I mentioned earlier on that we've got some exemptions that again mean where lots of other people in different walks of life would need to do more specific management and leadership training and across a broader breadth before they'd be ready for chartered assessment. We factor that chartered engineer process into this so that, again, there are some exemptions for you, which means that as a chartered engineer, you'd be ready for the chartered manager assessment more quickly than somebody in a different walk of life might otherwise be.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That sort of answers one of the other questions. What are the routes to chartered manager status for chartered engineers? So yeah, thank you for that. How would someone who does not have any managerial experience apply to gain knowledge and qualification to change my career? Who do I get in touch with at CMI to help create a career path? Well, obviously, you can get in touch with us at the IMechE. We are a registered centre for CMI, an approved registered centre. So we can support you on that journey, as can Matt. Matt, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that the route into this is through your professional body, the IMechE, and the partnership that we have, CMI and IMechE, which means that you as part of the programs that you can go on with IMechE, you get access to all the stuff that I've mentioned that's available through CMI to augment this. And yeah, I think those tools that I talked about in terms of identifying where your key development points are, they're quick and easy to use. They'll be available, as I say, from mid-June. So I'd recommend that being your starting point.
Lovely. I am ridiculously excited. It's not something that I knew you were doing, and I'm literally going to be diving into that as soon as it comes out. So yeah, please do keep us posted, and obviously we will do the same to all of our members.
Yep.
If you do want to get a better understanding of your own CMI pathways as an engineer, please do email training@imechE.org. And we will be more than happy to help. So I'm just seeing if there's one last question that we've got time for. Let's just have a look here. Is CMI recognised worldwide? Great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. And the answer to that is that it's recognised in many countries worldwide, but some more so than others. So typically, and this is quite common with chartered bodies generally, typically we are more recognisable, more recognised in Commonwealth countries. And so when we look at the CMI presence and the sort of the geography, if you like, of where our community of members and students are based, around about 10% are based away from the UK at the moment, and of that 10%, most are sort of Southeast Asia and the Indian subcontinent. So we've got quite a presence in places like Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, growing presence in Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand, and Pakistan, and lots going on in the moment with India. We're also increasingly recognised in the Middle East, places like the Emirates and so forth. Canada is another area where we're well recognised. We have a partnership with the Canadian Institute of Managers, but there are other parts of the world, places like the USA, where chartered doesn't really stand out and resonate quite as much. If I'm completely honest. So the answer is yes. Beyond the UK, we're recognised, but not universally across the entire globe
Yet.
Yeah, very important. Very important. Thank you, Alison.
So I think we've just got time for one more quick question. I don't know whether you'd be able to answer this, Matt, but I've got a question here from Giovanni. Would you recommend the new engineering manager course, which is level 3, as we've said, to a CEng, aspiring to the position of manager, but without formal people management experience?
Okay, I think, to be honest with you, that would be a conversation that's worthwhile having on an individual level, Giovanni, because when it comes to management experience, we're not just focused on people management at CMI. You know, it's obviously perhaps the most commonplace sort of management experience that people have, but it's not the only type of experience that we would recognise. So I would suggest, I mean, the new engineering manager program is fantastic, but I would suggest that you have a chat with the team at IMechE, so to be sure that you understand the learning outcomes that you gain from the program before you make a decision on whether it's not right for you. I would encourage everybody to do the same, and make sure that you've got clarity on what you'll gain from the program. But a superb course that's on offer. I'll pop the slide up a moment, Alison.
Lovely. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, just very conscious of people's time. So everyone, just wanted a really, really big thank you to everyone who's attended today. We had some fantastic questions, but most especially to Matt. Really just a great chat today, Matt. I've learned so much. I hope that our audience has as well. So thank you very, very much indeed for your time today. And that's it from us. So wishing you a great weekend.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.